similarly, they're going into military training ranges and restricted areas, sensitive areas where the military trains and practices. It's not, in those cases, the military going after them. And even though they're in restricted military airspace, the military has made no effort to try to shoot at them or engage them, and there's been no hostility the other way. I think what's been happening is that the government is baffled as to what these things are and why they're there and what their intent is, and they're trying to learn about that. And I'll tell you something that is kind of perhaps surprising, but probably every person in this room knows more about the UAP subject than the average admiral or general. No kidding.
Yeah.
When I talk with most military people, they have no idea about the history and the background of the subject. And the same thing with mainstream scientists. They don't know that things that I talked about yesterday about all the activity over nuclear sites. They don't know that in July 1952, on 2 different occasions, there were overflights of the U.S. Capitol. They don't know about the extensive documented nature of this phenomenon and how far back it goes in time, as this other gentleman was talking about, going back thousands of years. These are people who have had no prior exposure to this issue, by and large. You're the exception, not the rule.
Right.
So this is utterly new to them. And in their world, in their environment, they're used to encountering reconnaissance from other nations. They're used to thinking in those terms, so naturally that's the first kind of response they have. But even with that, they have been very careful not to engage in any hostilities, which I think is appropriate. And that's good. And what they're trying to do is simply to understand where these things are coming from and why they're there. In terms of communication, that's a fascinating thing. There's been no effort to communicate with us that I'm aware of. There have been instances in which they've reacted to the presence of military aircraft or ships, and there's been communication in that sense, interaction in that sense at least. There's been occasionally interaction reported with some of the electronics, interference with some of the sensors on aircraft and that sort of thing. But we're early on in even getting the military to consider the possibility that some of these things, and it's not easy to get some of these people to even take this seriously because they don't have the background knowledge that you all generally have. That's part of the challenge that we face.